All right. Can I get a thumbs up if you can hear me? Perhaps. Let's see here. Let's go to gallery view. Make this full screen. All right, cool. All right, so I think most of you guys are on no camera, which is great. I also see a bunch of you guys are muted. If you can hear me, this is Allison, I'm the host. If you can hear me, can you just like put something in the chat that says yes, or like give me a thumbs up if you have your video on? Okay, perfect. Maggie, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Beautiful. Thank you guys very much. This is only my second time to do Zoom using earbuds, and so I want to make sure I don't mess it up because technology and me don't always work together that well. So we'll go ahead and keep letting people into the meeting from the waiting room. One person waiting. Perfect. All right. Thank you guys so much. All right. So while we're waiting for everyone to get situated and get this thing actually started, because we have 2 minutes, I just want to sort of give you a quick rundown. So I know, like I said a second ago, a lot of you guys have your cameras turned off, which is totally fine. Normally in a standard studio setting, I would like to be able to like check your alignment and maybe give you constructive feedback. It's a little bit more challenging in a Zoom setting just because I'm on, you know, my small laptop screen. So I won't be able to see you guys super well. But if you want your camera on for any reason, you're more than welcome to do that. I am going to mute microphones though, so it's not a bunch of sort of background noise going on as we do this. And then if you have questions throughout, I would say either A, stick them in the chat, so like type them out in the chat, or my goal is to have a short little like 10-minute Q&A at the end of this, just to sort of go back over anything that may not have been super clear or that you might have had additional questions arise about. So we'll go ahead and keep admitting people here, admit everybody back into the meeting. All right. All right, we've got a couple people waiting. So also, y'all, before we get started, if you know that you have sensitive knees, my suggestion to you is going to be to have a towel or a lightweight blanket handy, because there's going to be an opportunity for us to come down to a knee in order to enter into a couple different poses. And sometimes having your knee directly on the mat doesn't feel so great, and therefore having something like a blanket or a towel underneath that kneecap can be of service to your body. All right, so far, I don't think I've got anybody left in the waiting room. So without further ado, and to be respectful of everybody's time, I want to go ahead and get started. So here we go. One person waiting, come on in. All right, we are good to go, I think. All right, so the first few minutes of this, you guys are going to be perhaps a little choppy, just as I'm monitoring the waiting room, making sure that nobody's stuck out there, that everybody's able to get in. But once we're about 5–10 minutes into this thing, I'll go ahead and stop monitoring that waiting room, and we can just work with one another and go forward. So we'll go ahead and start now. I'm going to scooch on back, and here we are. So I spent some time actually organizing, or not organizing, but setting up my camera so that I could be accessible to you guys. Admitting. All right, beautiful. Here we go. All right, you guys, so hi, I'm Allison Zalkowski. I've been teaching at Black Swan for about a little over 3 years now, close to 3.5. I truly love to teach beginners and people who are really early on in their yoga practice, because I think that that's a really defining period of time within your yoga journey. It's very defining in the way that how you feel after your first couple classes can inform the remainder of your yoga journey. And so my goal always is to be as informative and educational as well as supportive as possible. So what we're going to be doing today is breaking down the standard, so to speak, format of a vinyasa flow class. So we'll break down the flow class itself into smaller, more digestible chunks. And then within each of those chunks, we'll further break down into individual poses. And as we work through those individual poses, we'll talk about the alignment as well as ways to modify those poses to tailor make your practice fit your individual body. So let's rewind just a half a second and talk about what is vinyasa flow. So first off, vinyasa is a Sanskrit word. It comes from the combination of the word vi, which is in a special way, and nyasa, which is to place. So vinyasa translated means to place in a special way. So as we move our body in a vinyasa practice, we're focused on being really mindful about the way we move. Now, if we want to define vinyasa, that's going to be breath with movement. It's utilizing the breaths that we breathe in and out through our nose to guide and inform the movements of our physical body. So when we move mindfully with our breath, we are practicing vinyasa yoga. So beyond that, we're just going to have a little bit of fun today. So like I said a moment ago, if questions arise throughout, feel free to, sorry, hold on just a sec. Okay, sorry, Erin. Thank you for that message, Erin. Okay, so we're gonna have a little fun. If you have questions throughout, put them in the chat or maybe like make a mental note, write it down. And then when we have opportunities to sort of digest and discuss, I can hopefully answer some of those questions for you. So the poses that I've picked today, I've picked 24 poses out of the entire repertoire of yoga poses, of which there are thousands. And I've chosen these 24. It seems like a lot, 24. And it is, but it isn't. So I picked poses that are really fundamental, really foundational to a very standard vinyasa practice. So we'll start by working our way into a child's pose. Now, child's pose in its truest form is taken with the knees taken wide to the edges of the mat, big toes kissed behind your bum. You're sitting your hips back to your heels as much as you can. And then you start to walk your hands out in front of you as far as you can go, allowing your forehead to come to rest on the ground. So you're softening into this pose. But I know that this pose, even just in that first moment of practice, can be a little intimidating, a little confrontational. So if you know that you're a little tighter in the hips or in the low back, you could take your child's pose with your thighs together and then spilling forward from there. You also have an option to take any props that you have available to you into the mix. So you might take a block underneath your forehead in order to give you a little lift away from the earth. Or you might open your ankles a little bit wider and bring your butt to a block that you've got a boost. And you don't have to go all the way down until your forehead rests on something. You don't even have to fold at all. You can take your introductory pose or your integrative yoga pose from a seat. And if the seat with your heels underneath your bum isn't right for you, come down to a seat. And this is how we'll begin. Now that you're familiar with a few of the options you have available to you, I want you to find a posture that serves your body. So child's pose with the knees wide, shins on the earth and big toes kissing behind you, or taking a moment to dial back on that child's pose and finding a slightly gentler, slightly more approachable variation for yourself. So once you are settled into your child's pose, close your eyes, relax your jaw, and start to breathe deeply and slowly. Breathing is something that we do all day, every day, all night, every night without thinking about it. Our breath happens because we need to breathe to survive. We're very infrequently super mindful of our breath. So here at the start of our time together, I want to encourage a mindfulness within the way you are breathing. As you inhale through your nose, can you feel the air gliding through your airway, down the back of your throat, into your lungs, expanding your rib cage in all 360 degrees. And as you exhale, can you feel that air make the reverse journey right back out your nose, coming from the bottom of your lungs, using the strength of your belly to squeeze the air from your lungs, extending all the way up and out through your throat, out your nose. So there's a mindfulness to this breath. And we talk about vinyasa movement with breath. It's the breath that truly defines the practice. It's not the shapes that we make or the postures that we choose to put our body into. It's the breaths that come in and out of our nose, or sometimes our mouth. Open mouth breathing is a great way to alleviate heat if you ever get a little bit too warm while practicing. But for a nice, controlled, uniform yogic breath, it's in and out through the nose. Inhales just as long as the exhales. Maybe even your exhales get a tiny bit longer than your inhales. We're slowing down our nervous system. We're entering into this space. Take a scan of your body here from the tips of your fingers to the soles of your feet, and just give yourself an opportunity to adjust this child's pose in any way. You've been here for a moment or two, so now you've felt what this feels like in your body, and maybe your brain is telling you that you want to modify a little bit. Remember, you can always lift up, you can always come deeper, you can bring your thighs to touch, you can sit on your butt. And we'll start to cultivate what we typically utilize in our vinyasa practice, our ujjayi pranayama. Now, our ujjayi breath is a heated breath. It's meant to create warmth in the body, which in turn gives our muscles and our connective tissues the opportunity to soften and respond to the movements that we're doing. If you do not want a warmed breath, you're still going to follow the same breath format. You just won't constrict the back of your throat. So to build into that ujjayi breath all together, take a really deep breath in through your to fog up a mirror in front of your face. Deep breath in through the nose. Big open mouth exhale, hiss and sigh it out. One more time, deep breath in through the nose. Open your mouth, begin to exhale. Halfway through, seal your lips, finish that breath out through your nose. With your lips sealed, take another deep inhale through your nose. Keeping your lips sealed, forcefully exhale through your nose. See if you can recreate that same hissing sound that your breath took on with the open mouth. That hissing breath that forces a constriction in the back of your throat, that creates a vibration in your airway, is your ujjayi breath. That is that heat building breath. And if you want to maintain that breath throughout the remainder of our opportunities to move today, please feel free. If the heat does not serve you, because I know it's hot in Houston today, if you happen to be in Houston, you can continue breathing in and out through the nose nice and deeply, but you don't have to worry about recreating that same sound. You don't need to find the constriction in the airway. You're just focusing on sending oxygen-rich blood throughout your entire body by way of really deep breaths. Wherever you are in your child's pose, we're all together going to make our way to all fours. So if you were seated, rock forward. If you were down in child's pose, just shift up. Stack your shoulders over your wrists, and then spread your fingers nice and wide here. Take a look back at your knees. Make sure they're open to about hips width distance so that your thighs are perpendicular to the earth and parallel to each other. From here, tuck under all 10 of your toes so that you feel like you could lift your knees by pressing into your feet, but keep the knees grounded for a moment. Shift your hands just about 2 inches further forward on your mat. Fingers spread wide, root down into your fingerprints. So this is a nice position through the hands to distribute energy forward and down. This helps take pressure out of your wrists for any opportunity you have to come into a quadruped or hand balance pose. Keep your toes tucked under, keep pressing into your hands. Take a slow breath in. As you exhale, begin to lift your knees, send your hips up and back, turning your body into an inverted V shape. This is your downward facing dog. And depending upon your own flexibility level, this might be really intense in your body. So take a moment here and just dance it out. It doesn't have to be cute or pretty. I just want it to feel good in your body. So maybe you pedal out your feet. Maybe you sway your hips side to side. Maybe you give your head a vigorous shake no and an adamant nod yes. Just notice what's going on through that posterior line of your body. Notice any stretch you might feel from the base of your heels all the way up to your glutes. And then from the tips of your fingers all the way down your back to your tailbone. Take a slow breath in through your nose. And then gently lower your knees to the earth. Come to either a kneeling position or a seat. So in the beginning of a yoga practice, you're going to find what a lot of teachers will call an introduction or an integration. That's something like a child's pose or a reclined position or a meditative seat. It's where the breath gets cultivated. And it might be where you find a few small movements to begin to warm up the spine, because ultimately, regardless of the end goal of any particular yoga practice, the goal is always to mobilize the body in any way that it can be mobilized, primarily within the spine. So you've got the spine, it can move forward and backward, it can side bend, and it can also twist. So when you think about the poses that your body moves through in a yoga class, you're targeting the spine and trying to find that mobility, because the more we can move the body, the more we become aware of our body, the better our body can serve us and vice versa. So beyond that introduction or that integration, the next bit or the next chunk of a standard vinyasa class is going to be sun salutation A. Now, there's a number of iterations that this can take on. It's not a hard and fast rule that sun A has to follow this set sequence of poses, but it is really common for a sun salutation A to follow this set sequence of poses. And so I'm actually going to wheel my computer a little closer to my little poster here. So I made this poster a few years ago. I do an event every year on New Year's Day called 108 Sun Salutations, where we do 108 of this guy right here. So I want to take a second to just go through it with you, and then we will get on our mats and put our bodies into these shapes, find our alignment and our modification, and then find a sort of flow. So your sun salutation A typically is going to start from a standing position. So we're right here. This is Samasthiti, it's hands at heart center. You may or may not come through that in a standard vinyasa class. That's okay. It's just a nice way to cultivate a sense of calm or set an intention for your practice. Beyond that, we go into an upward salute where the arms sweep up into the air. You're lifting up and away from the ground. And then down into a forward fold where you bend your hips and let your upper body melt down towards the earth. Next, it's a halfway lift, which is really done as a way to reset the spine and build strength within the low back. It's an often neglected area of the body, because if you think about your normal day-to-day activities, you stand up, you sit down, but how often do you focus on strengthening the low back muscles in a way such as this? So we use a halfway lift as a means to reset the spine. From there, we bring our hands to the earth and we find our way to a high plank. From high plank, we'll move into our Chaturanga Dandasana, which is probably the most complicated thing that you're going to be expected to do in any standard yoga class, whether it be a beginner or a power or anything in between. We'll go over all the variations and options that exist for Chaturanga so that you can find what's going to best serve you here in a moment. After that, it's a lift of the chest, a gentle back bend, hands pressed down, heart lifts up. Upward facing dog is one option. There's a gentler option that we'll also cover called Cobra. Beyond that, we shift back into our downward facing dog, that same inverted V shape that we did just a moment ago. After that, you're back to your forward fold. So you leave your hands at the top of your mat and you step your feet forward. You're back in that folded position. Halfway lift to once again reset the spine, back to fold, all the way back up to that upward salute where the hands reach up into the air. Hands find heart center. Now, if you're in a 108 sun salutations practice, for example, you'll see this Samasthiti. In a standard Black Swan class, you may or may not see it. I've taken a number of teachers' classes that do include it and a number that don't. So it's sort of a hit or miss whether or not this will be a pose that you see commonly. But the rest of these, I promise you, you will see in 99% of classes that you take at Black Swan. So I'm going to go ahead and scooch the camera back, and we're going to start talking about the alignment of those poses and sort of demystifying what we do in a vinyasa class. Because a lot of what, for me, I found so intimidating about yoga when I first began practicing was just the sheer magnitude of information and the volume at which, or excuse me, the speed at which I thought I needed to be moving. I was under the impression that I had to move just as fast as everybody else, just as fast as the teacher may have been cueing. But truly what makes a vinyasa practice so beautiful is its creativity and its flexibility, the way in which you can modify the practice to best fit your own self. So as you're ready, make your way to a standing position closer to the front edge of your mat. So not necessarily in the middle and definitely not at the back, really about a third of the way from the top of your mat. And then check in with the footing here. You want to have your knees and your hips in line with each other as well as in line with your ankles. If you're narrow hips, having your feet together might feel nice, or even if you're mid-width, having the feet together might feel okay. If you are wider hips or have any low back pain, step your feet just a little bit wider, but check that you still have that alignment through the legs. Now we'll root down into our foundation in order to lift up into our growth. So pick up all 10 of your toes here, fan them out, and then press them individually back down into the earth. You'll feel the arches of your feet begin to lift. You'll feel your thighs gently rotate inward towards each other. So all of a sudden, what seemed like a passive standing position is now super active. Your quadriceps begin to engage. And then you want to find a neutral pelvis. So what I mean by a neutral pelvis is not this. This happens when we wear high heels and we're trying to suck in our belly and make our waist look little. This is no bueno for the back. But you also don't want this, because this looks just as uncomfortable just in the other way. So you want to find a neutral pelvis. So when you hear a teacher say tuck your tailbone, what they want you to do is just be mindful of the alignment of your hips, as opposed to having your tailbone sticking out or your pubic bone pulling too far in. So find your neutral, keep pressing down into your feet, and then slowly begin to lift your hands into the sky, taking a big breath in as you reach up as high as you can. Slow and gently start to shrug your shoulders down your back, but keep your fingertips lifted. So you start to feel an activation through your shoulder girdle. And then actively rotate your pinky fingers inward towards one another. What this does is it creates an expansion of your shoulder blades across your upper back. So the shoulders are open and active. The fingertips are spread. The feet are rooted. The belly draws in order to tuck the tailbone. This is your alignment for Urdhva Hastasana. Take a big breath in. Gently fold your body forward as you exhale. Lead with your heart. Focus on keeping a long spine. Knees are never locked out. Gently surrender into that fold. In that fold, your hands can come anywhere that feels right for your body. So if it's comfortable for you to reach all the way down to the ground, groovy. If you want to wrap around the backs of your legs or keep your hands at your hips, just as groovy. So general rule of thumb when it comes to breathing and moving is if we're moving up and away, it's an inhale. If we're moving down, folding or collapsing towards the earth, it's an exhale. So we lift it on the breath in, we fold it on the breath out. We'll take this moment to reset the spine with the halfway lift. Inhale to iron out your back. Reach the crown of your head far away from your tailbone. And at the same time, reach your tailbone far away from the crown of your head. So it's like you are actively trying to stretch out an accordion in the way of your spine, right? In this halfway lift, focus on pulling the belly in. That's where the support for the back comes from. Your hands can be anywhere that serves you. A lot of you will hear hands to the shins or hands to the thighs. That's a really nice way to place the hands. And I find that if I press my hands into my legs, I really have that ability to leverage my crown forward a little bit further. So I feel like I get a little bit longer in my spine when I press my hands into something. Always just avoid the knees though, because we are not flamingos and the knees don't bend backwards. So thighs, shins, hands to hips, or if you're really bendy through the backs of your legs, you could even take this half lift with your hands on the ground. And it's not necessarily a matter of making your spine parallel to the earth, so much as it is making your spine long and straight. So right here, my fingertips are on the earth. This is my halfway lift. There's a downward slope in my spine, but it's a straight downward slope, not a curve. So you've got your options for halfway lift. Take a slow breath in through your nose. Gently forward fold, exhale, release your crown towards your feet. We'll put those few poses together. Inhale, rise all the way up. Stand tall, reach to the sky, Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, forward fold, hinge at your hips, melt your heart forward, keep a long spine. Inhale, lift halfway, find a long, straight spine. Exhale, forward fold once more. We'll do that one more time together. Inhale, rise all the way up, reach your hands into the air. Exhale, forward fold, lead with your heart, keep your spine long, melt down. Inhale, lift halfway, flatten out your back, reach your tailbone away from your crown. Exhale, forward fold. From here, go ahead and make your way back down to a seat. And I'm going to take a moment to break down this Chaturanga Dandasana. So I mentioned at the beginning of this that Chaturanga is probably the most complicated pose that you're going to come across in any vinyasa class. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of little fine details, about the alignment of a Chaturanga Dandasana. First off, what does that mean? We can translate it. Danda is staff. So Chaturanga Dandasana is, Chaturanga is 4 limbs. Dandasana is staff pose. So it's 4-limb staff pose. It's taking your body, in layman's terms, from a high plank with straight elbows, hands on the earth, feet extended back, to a low plank where the elbows wrap back towards the hips and the heart begins to lower towards the earth. Now it seems simple, but like I mentioned, there's a lot of fine little details. The primary detail of that is the strength of your spine in relationship to your core. So we already talked about the slight tuck of the tailbone to find a neutral pelvis. You want to keep that neutral pelvis in the high plank and in the low plank. So you really need to find a nice control through the belly here. The second little nuance is the placement of the upper arms. So in a standard gym style push-up, the arms come wide and the elbows splay outward. In yoga, the hands are only as wide as the shoulders, and as we bend the elbows back, the upper arms squeeze tightly into the rib cage. So it requires a lot of strength and control in the shoulders as well. So you're strong in the spine and the belly, you're strong in the shoulders. The legs automatically strengthen up because those quadriceps engage to help keep the spine long and the belly active. So your fullest expression of Chaturanga Dandasana is that one I showed a moment ago. Hands down to the ground, shoulders stacked directly over wrists with your feet stepped far back to the back edge of your mat. In order to create the space to lower your chest and bend your elbows back, you have to rock forward just a tad. From here, a breath out, because remember, breaths out take us towards the earth. You wrap the elbows back, squeeze the upper arms into the ribs, and lower halfway. Now, that is a lot of load for your shoulders, even if you are a very lightweight or petite person. So you always have the option to lower that lever point. In that instance, you find your high plank exactly the same as you would in any other any other variation. You'll rock forward, but before you begin to bend your elbows, you'll lower your knees to the earth. Mindful here that you don't automatically disengage the belly. The knees down is not a sign of weakness. I actually find it to be extraordinarily challenging because it forces you to pay attention to what's going on in the belly. From here, you wrap the elbows in and back and you lower the chest halfway. So you have those two options, knees up for more challenge in the shoulders, knees down for a softer variation in your body. Beyond that chaturanga, so it's an exhale to lower, and an inhale to lift the heart right back up. So you have two options. The first option is Cobra Pose. Cobra Pose is a gentler variation on the spine. Shift forward, lower down. In Cobra, you will actually bring your belly all the way to the earth. Down. To find your Cobra, zip in strong and tight through the inseams of both your legs, and then super glue the shoelace sides of your foot to your mat. This might cause your kneecaps to lift as your quadriceps engage. On a breath in, engage your spine and begin to float your chest up and away from the earth. A real testament to whether you're using your hands pressing down as opposed to your spine is whether or not you can float your hands. You want your spine engaged enough here that you could lift the hands up off the mat and keep the elevation of the chest. So Cobra is a really nice way to build strength into the mid-back without putting too much strain on the low back. The second option is an upward facing dog. It's a little bit more intense back bend. It's going to depend upon what feels best in your body, what you want to do as you flow through the vinyasa. So upward facing dog, high plank, rock it forward, low plank. In the upward facing dog, you flip to the top sides of your feet, and then you send your heart up through your shoulders. I'm still squeezing my upper arms really tightly into my rib cage. I'm pressing down through the shoelace sides of my feet so much that my kneecaps and my thighs are floating off the ground. So by floating the thighs off the ground, you are forcing that tuck of the tailbone, the engagement of the belly. So that's the key to creating the lift of the thighs in up dog. Pull the belly in. So you have the options. Excuse me, I'm talking and breathing and I'm getting a little bit winded. So you have the options. You start in your high plank, you lower down halfway. You either have the knees up for that movement or down. Beyond that, you'll inhale to lift your chest, finding either your up dog or your cobra. If you're taking cobra, hands are not doing the lift, your spine is. If you are taking that up dog, your hands are actually facilitating with the lift. And you need to be really mindful not to shrug your shoulders up to your ears, but instead to draw them down the back, like you were putting your shoulder blades into their own back pockets in order to broaden across the chest. Coming out of either your upward facing dog or your cobra, the toes tuck under, and then you lift all the way up and back for your downward facing dog. If you're coming into that from up dog, so right here the knees aren't down, you could flip one foot as you begin to lift the hips, flip the second, and then land in that down dog. So I want to give you guys an opportunity to move through a few chaturangas here just to feel what it is like in your body, and maybe to pick and choose the variations of that chaturanga you would like to take. And just because you take one variation one time does not mean you have to take it every time. This is your practice and you can mix it up however you'd like to mix it up. So in order to put all the poses that we've thus far gone over in our Sun A together and into practice, let's find our way back to that standing position here at the top of our mat. So remember, you're about a third away from the top edge of your mat. Take a moment, go ahead and adjust your footing. Remember, your ankles can be a little bit wider or they can be squeezed nice together. Quads engage, tailbone tucks slightly, belly draws in, your pelvis is neutral. Take a slow breath in and a slow breath out. Inhale, reach your hands into the air, upward salute. Exhale, forward fold, hinge at your hips, melt your heart down. Inhale, lift halfway, find a long, flat back. Exhale, high plank. Take your palms to the earth, right below your shoulders, and step your feet to the back of your mat. Now, you might know right off the bat that you want to lower your knees for your chaturanga. Listen to your own body. Make the moves that your body wants you to make. All together, shift forward. Take a breath in. Exhale, lower to your halfway, whether you drop your knees or not. Inhale, lift your heart through your shoulders. You have the option of up dog or cobra. Hold here. If you are in cobra, are your feet pressing into the earth or have they lifted? If they've lifted, press them right back down. Your feet are super glued to your mat. If you are in up dog, are your knees and thighs on the ground or are they lifted? If they're down, hug your belly in and pick them up. Take a slow breath in. Exhale, downward facing dog. Send your hips up and back. Take a slow breath in through your nose here. And a gentle breath out. From here, you need to get your feet back to the top of your mat. How do we do it? You have any number of ways to get there. My preferred way is just to walk. Walking is the easiest, most functional way to get there. So whatever works for you, we'll start by walking. Get your feet to the top of your mat. We always reset the spine with that halfway lift. Inhale, lengthen your crown away from your tailbone. Exhale, forward fold, let your head grow heavy. Inhale, rise all the way to standing, hands up, Urdhva Hastasana, grab for the sky. Exhale, forward fold, hinge at your hips, let your heart lead the way, melt down. Halfway lift, inhale, flat back. High plank, exhale, palms to the earth, feet step back. Pick where your knees go. Inhale, rock forward. Exhale, lower down to your chaturanga, halfway for up dog, all the way for cobra. Inhale, lift your heart, find your back bend. Exhale, downward facing dog, send your hips up and back. Take a slow breath in and a big breath out. We'll do that one more time. Make your way to the top of your mat. If you want to try one big step as opposed to a bunch of small steps, do that. Halfway lift once you're there. Inhale, flatten your back. Exhale, forward fold, let yourself go. Inhale, rise all the way up, reach to the ceiling, fill your lungs. Exhale, forward fold, hinge your hips, melt back down to the earth. Halfway lift, inhale, lengthen. High plank, exhale, palms down, feet back. Shift your body forward, inhale. Lower halfway down, your variation of Chaturanga Dandasana. Upward facing dog, inhale, or cobra, lift your heart. Downward facing dog, exhale, send your hips to the sky. Slow and steady, lower your shins back down to your mat. That is your Sun A. So it may have other postures in it depending upon the class that you're in, but a standard Sun A is just that series of poses. Up, down, half up, down, down, lift the chest up, down dog down, right? So it's a matter of inhaling up, exhaling down in repetition, finding that sort of meditation in motion. And what we're doing most of the way through the Sun A is warming the spine up in that sagittal plane, that forward bending and back bending space. So you notice all of what we did, up and down, and lift and down, and open the chest and lift the butt. It's all variations of back bending and forward folding. So now the spine is plenty warm in that sagittal plane. So now we'll start to move on to our Sun B, or Sun Salutation B. Sun B is where the class can get super funky, super creative, super off the wall. Your Sun A's are often going to be pretty standard. Your Sun B is where you start to get the flavors and the spices. But there's a pretty standard hard and fast rule about Sun B, and it's usually that you're going to target one side of the body and then do all the same poses over again on the second side of the body. Typically, we'll start right side first and then go left side second. The big reason for that, and you might giggle, the big reason for that is because if you start introducing twists in your Sun B, you always want to twist to the right first. And the reason for that is because of the directionality of our large intestine. So if we start twisting right to left, we help coax everything we eat through its proper pathway so that we have a high functioning digestive system, if you catch my drift. Now, there are often variations to that if twists aren't involved. But for me personally, I always start on the right side just because it's a good habit to get into. So as we start to break down a number of poses, we'll start middle, right, left, middle. So we're like sandwiching our sides with that middle, that realigning, that grounding or resetting of the spine, right? So we're going to start talking about chair pose. Go ahead and make your way back into that standing position at about the 1/3 mark away from the top edge of your mat. So chair pose is called chair pose because it looks like a chair. So here we go. Take a big breath in, reach your hands up into the sky. Exhale, sink your butt down and back, find your chair pose. Now, big important thing in the chair pose, when you look down at the ground, can you see all of your toenails? You want that answer to be yes. So if you have your knees way far forward and your heels are lifted, when you look down, you're not seeing toenails. In this instance, put more weight back in your heels, and then really imagine you could take your hips and press them back. You might feel like you're gonna fall. You might, and that's okay. If you fall here, all you're doing is sitting down. So it's just like a really hard sit. Falling out of a chair pose is not the end of the world. But you've got your weight pulled back into your heels and then hug in through your belly. Feel your tailbone tuck towards the backs of your knees. And you've got the arms lifted just like you would in that upward salute. If this creates discomfort in your shoulders, open your arms a little wider like a capital letter Y. This is your chair pose. If having the inner thighs together creates any discomfort in your low back, step your feet into this hips width alignment, and then just focus that you're still keeping the thighs active. So often there's a directive when the thighs are together to squeeze them into each other. It's hard to squeeze your thighs together when they aren't touching. So can you imagine squeezing them together and really feel those inner thighs light up? All right, so we're gonna find strength here in this chair pose. Take a big breath in. Sink just a tiny bit further back into your seat. Exhale. One more time, just like that. Inhale. Exhale to sink. Take one more breath in. Exhale, forward fold, hinge at your hips, let go. Breathe in, lift halfway, find a flat back. Exhale, fold, step your left foot to the back of your mat. So now you've got a nice long lunge. Keep your hands low for a moment and then make any micro adjustments you need to your stance. What you want here is your right knee stacked directly over your right ankle. So if your knee is super far forward here, rock it back. Or you can inchworm the foot forward to meet the knee, depending upon what your body needs. The back leg is extended, you're high on your back toes, so you start to feel a stretch to the front of this left thigh. From here, this is our runner's lunge. We'll shift into our high crescent lunge. Now, there's a couple options you have here. The first option is slightly gentler, and it involves dropping your back knee to the earth. So we'll all do that together. Go ahead and drop your back knee. You can keep those back toes tucked for a little bit more control, or if you want to challenge your body, untuck your toes, press down through the top of your foot. Either way, begin to lift your heart and hands towards the sky. This is your crescent lunge. Right now, we're in the low variation of it because the back knee is down. Focus here. Pull in through your navel. Feel your tailbone tuck. Keep lifting up through the back of your heart. This is all you've got to focus on here. If you would like to get a little bit more active, imagine that you could scissor your inner thighs together. That's where you start building strength into your thighs, which will enable you to lift that back knee up off the ground for your high crescent lunge. So if this is enough for you here, stay put and focus on that inward squeeze of the thighs. If you feel strong and you want to try lifting the back knee, tuck your back toes under, press your heel towards the back of your mat. Automatically the knee will begin to lift. So that would be your high crescent lunge. Big breath in because you're lifting up and away from the earth. And maybe you sink a little deeper into that front knee on the breath out. Slow inhale. Slow exhale. Take one more breath in. Gently lower your hands to the earth and let your back knee come down if it was lifted. So we're going to incorporate that crescent lunge into a gentle flow, introducing two more postures here on the right side, and then we'll do that whole thing on the left side in just a sec. So you're here in this runner's lunge. I want you to all try to lift your back knee, even if it's just for a moment. Lift the back knee. Feel your inner thighs turn on. Inhale, begin to rise all the way up. Reach your hands to the sky. So if you liked the back knee down and having the back knee up here creates discomfort in the low back, bend your back knee a little bit. That's going to give you the space to scoop your tailbone under. Slow breath in, lift up through the chest. Exhale, pivot your left heel down so your pinky toe lines up with the back edge of your mat and open your arms to a T. So your chest now faces the left side of your mat. This is your warrior two. Warrior two is a pretty standard pose. You may notice here, my right leg has not moved. So here's where it was for that high crescent lunge. Here's where it is for that warrior two. Front leg is stationary like a statue. Focus on the press of the pinky edge of your left foot down. And then as you reach those arms in opposition, Can you pull your shoulder blades down your back so they're not shrugging up? The strength doesn't come from here. It comes from here. Slow and steady, flip your right palm to face the sky. Inhale, reverse warrior. Take that right hand up and back. Notice again, my front leg has not moved. It's still bent. My knee is still stacked over my ankle. I'm focusing here on a side bend, working into lateral flexion of the spine, creating a nice stretch from my right hip to my right armpit. What the heck do you do with this left hand, right? You could take it to your left hip. You could let it drape down the back of your left leg as long as you're not pressing with all of your might into it. I bet those right quads are yelling at you, aren't they? Hold it. You got this. You got to breathe. Or you can wrap that left arm around your low back. Here we go. All together, y'all take a big breath in. Reach that right hand high. Exhale. Cartwheel your hands down to frame your right foot at the top of your mat. You're swiveling back up to your left toes. From here, step your right foot back to meet your left. Find your high plank. Right there. So that might be a big movement. If that requires you to bring your back knee to the earth, that's okay. Find that high plank once you're there. Take a big breath in. Down dog, exhale, hips to the sky. Take an inhale right here. And a gentle exhale, let it go. Start to make your way back to the top edge of your mat. We've got to repeat those poses on our left side. So once you're in your forward fold, inhale, lift halfway, find a flat back. Exhale, forward fold, let it go. Inhale, rise all the way up, upward salute. Reach your hands into the air. Exhale, chair pose, sit your hips back, find your weight in your heels. Take a big breath in. Exhale, forward fold, keep your weight in your heels. Halfway lift, inhale, flat back. Exhale, runner's lunge, stepping your right foot to the back of your mat. Hold there. Now, I like to try to coach symmetry through your sides. So if you had your back knee down on the first side, go ahead and drop it down here. If you had it lifted, keep it lifted. Inhale, rise, find your high crescent lunge here on this left side. And then focus, we're gonna talk a little bit more about the alignment here. So focus on squaring your hips towards the top edge of your mat. The way you do that is by pressing into your back toes, in this instance, your right toes, and then feel your right hip pull forward as your left hip hugs back. So you really want to square your hips towards the top edge of your mat, and then lift up through your heart, find the elongation of your spine, hands are up into the air. If that back knee is on the ground, do what you need to here and lift it. Take a slow breath in. Warrior two. Spin your right heel down. So pinky lines up with the back edge of your mat and tee your arms open. So I'm doing this side with my back to you in case there's something different about the alignment that you can identify from taking a different vantage point. Nice expansion of your arms, fingertips reaching away from fingertips. Left knee is still stacked over your heel, mindful that that left knee isn't collapsing in towards your arch. Actively roll it open toward your pinky toe. Begin to flip that left palm to face the sky. Inhale, reverse warrior. Take your left hand up and back. Find that side bend through the spine, opening up from your left hip all the way up to your left armpit. Again, what do you do with this back arm? Options, hand to hip, gently drape it down your back leg, or wrap it around your low spine. Take one more breath in right here. Exhale, slowly cartwheel your hands down to frame your left foot. Rise back up to the toes of your right foot. Begin to step your left foot to the back of your mat. Find your high plank. This time we'll actually go through that chaturanga. Inhale to rock forward. Exhale, lower to your chaturanga. You're halfway down. Lift your heart. Inhale, cobra or upward facing dog. Downward facing dog. Exhale, send your hips high. Slowly bring your knees back down to the earth. Take a second to grab a sip of water. All right, you guys, we're gonna go through that sun B one more time on each side. What we're gonna do, the way this is gonna differ from the first round we just took, is with that first round, we got into that runner's lunge by stepping back from the front of the mat. There's also another way to do that where you step forward from the back of your mat from a downward facing dog. And it's a little bit more challenging. And if it's not an option that feels right in your body, you can always modify your practice to take that variation that involves stepping back as opposed to stepping forward and through. So as you're ready, make your way back into your downward facing dog, and we'll find what needs to happen to create that step of the back foot through the hands. Cool? So hands come to the earth, toes tuck under, start to lift your hips, find your downward facing dog. So we're getting a little bit more dynamic with the movement of our hips here. Reconnect with your breath. Take a slow inhale through your nose, and a slow exhale through your nose. Bend your knees, gaze forward, and then step or walk to the top of your mat. Find your forward fold. Halfway lift. Inhale, find length in your spine. Exhale, forward fold and release. Inhale, rise all the way up. Urdhva Hastasana, lift for the ceiling. Exhale, chair pose. Sink your hips down and back. Take a slow breath in. Feel your heart rise. Sink your hips a tiny bit further back. Exhale. Last inhale right here. Exhale, forward fold, melt down. Halfway lift. Inhale, lengthen your spine. Exhale, chaturanga dandasana, moving through your high plank, utilizing your breath, informing your movements, moving however works best for your own body, making your way all the way back into your downward facing dog. Here we go, starting on the right side. Bring your feet to touch at the back of your mat so your big toes come together. Equal weight in both hands. Inhale, start to lift your right heel high to the sky behind you. So your left foot stays down, your right foot lifts. Now, it doesn't matter how high that right heel goes. It can be lifted 1 foot, and that's perfectly great. Look at your right foot and make sure that your pinky toe is facing down towards the ground. That's the real challenge here, is we often rotate the hip open. I want you to close that hip, dial your pinky toe to the earth. Take a big breath in here. Exhale, bring your knee all the way forward towards your nose. You'll notice your body begins to shift forward. You're more like in a high plank through the arms. This is what needs to happen to step that foot through. So your thigh hugs in tight, you're rounding through your spine, and then step that right foot towards your right thumb. Now, if the right foot comes to about the halfway point, no worries. Grab hold of that right foot and walk it forward yourself. You've got that power to make that foot go where you want it to go. Groovy? So here we are in that lunge, right knee stacks over right hip. Inhale, rise. Find your high crescent lunge, knee up or knee down. Stay for the exhale, pull your left hip forward. Take a big breath in. If the back knee is down, lift it. Exhale, warrior 2. Pivot open to your left. Tee open your arms. Make sure that right knee hasn't moved. Reverse warrior. Inhale, right hand goes up and back. Nice stretch through the side body. Exhale, high plank. Hands spin down to meet the earth. Right toes meet left. Take an optional chaturanga here. If you want it, take it. If you don't, come straight back to your downward facing dog. Whew, I lost an earbud. I got to put it back in. So come back to your breath. We'll move through that one more time on our left side. Take a slow inhale through your nose and a slow exhale through the nose. Inhale, send your left heel up to the sky. Even if that foot only lifts 12 inches, can you look down the length of your body at your left toes and then dial your left toes to face the ground? Feel your left hamstrings work. Take a big breath in. Exhale, shift forward, round your spine. Try to bring your left knee to your nose. Holding here for just a second. Feel your belly wrap in towards that center line. Feel your shoulder blades open across your upper back. As you're ready, step that left foot towards your left thumb. And again, remember, if it doesn't go all the way, grab hold, walk it through yourself. Find your way to that long runner's lunge. Back knee stays lifted or lowers down. Inhale, crescent lunge, rise up. Stay for the exhale, shift your right hip gently forward. Deep breath in, start to lift the back knee if it's down. Exhale, warrior two, pivot open to your right, tee out your arms. Reverse warrior, inhale, sweep your left hand up and back, find that side body bend. Exhale, high plank, hands swivel to the earth. You're back on your right toes, step your left foot back. Your variation of chaturanga or straight back to downward facing dog, you choose. All right, you guys, go ahead and lower your shins back to the earth. Have a seat. I have a question here in the chat. So it says, the transition from up dog to down dog feels like it puts strain on my low back. From up dog to down, okay. Besides engaging my belly, do you have any tips on preventing low back strain? Alexa, you asked that. So in that particular transition, up dog to down dog, I would say the biggest player in that transition is the core. If you're still feeling that discomfort, even when you're really activating through your core, I'm going to suggest you bend your knees. So what that's going to look like here is it may feel a little goofy at first, but here, so we're here in our up dog. And here in the up dog, you want your thighs lifted so you're not dumping into your low back. This causes a lot of low back discomfort too. Press through the tops of your feet, feel the belly engage, feel the thighs lift. And then from here, instead of with locking out the knees and shifting back, what you're going to do is you're going to flip the feet, bend the knees. So you're finding like a more fluid lift of the hips up and back. And maybe that can help alleviate some of that discomfort. You also can always modify even further. So instead of going full-blown up dog, maybe take a cobra, maybe shift back to a gentle modified child's pose, tuck the toes, lift the butt, and find your way to down dog that way. So Alexa, I hope that helps. If that's something that you can try. Oh, good, that felt a lot better. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad for that feedback. All right, you guys. So what we've done up until this point has been a nice like preview. These would be poses you'd probably see in the first like 15, 20 minutes of a standard vinyasa practice. And then going forward from there, a teacher is going to have an end goal. So that might be a peak pose, or it might be a particular area of the body that they're aiming to create more space or more strength in, or a combination of those things. But I always like to lead a beginner class in a way that targets the whole body in a really cohesive way. So I won't put a peak pose in a beginner's class. You're not often going to see anything super weird in the way of transitions, because beginners are foundational classes. Yes, they can be challenging. They're also meant to build into your muscle memory as well as your yoga memory. So you start to identify the names of poses. You start to be able to move a little bit more fluidly, a little bit more seamlessly, because maybe you've done this sequence of poses before and you have an anticipation of what comes next. Inhale, crescent lunge. Exhale, warrior two. Inhale, reverse warrior. Exhale, moving into whatever else you're moving into, like what we did, going all the way back into that chaturanga. So you always know if you get lost in a yoga class, if you get lost in the chaos of a flow, be mindful of the breath. Pay attention to what breath, because if you inhale, you must exhale. And if you've exhaled, you must inhale. So a really nice rule of thumb when you might get a little overwhelmed or a little bit off put by the speed or the intensity of a yoga class is that if you are breathing, you are doing enough. And if you can unite your movements with your breaths, regardless of whether or not they're the same movements that the rest of the class is doing, you are practicing vinyasa yoga. You are creating something great for yourself on your own mat. So this is like a nice little taste of what you can go forward into doing later on. So we are intending to do a level 2 beginners or level 2 basics workshop where we'll start working into a few more poses based off of the foundations we've already gone through. But I want to take a little time here to cool down the body as well as work on a little bit of a calming breath. So we'll take about 10 minutes. So yeah, perfect. That'll give us the last like 5 minutes or so for Q&A. So from here, you're already seated on your mat. We're going to take a moment and open up through the outer hips. So what we've done thus far with these lunges is we've targeted through the front line of the hip. Now we're going to target through this back line of the hip, getting into that glute space. So you're here on your mat. Go ahead, tend to your knees and lay down onto your back. So you've got your knees bent up towards the ceiling, and then walk your heels in close to your bum. So we're going to take a reclined half pigeon pose here. And I like a reclined half pigeon more than a prone half pigeon because I think it gives us a little bit more opportunity to tailor this pose to best fit ourselves. So keep your left foot where it is. Cross your right ankle over your left thigh like you are making a number 4, an upside down number 4 here. Keep that right foot really active. So try to pull your toes back towards your shin. And then without using your hands, can you drive your right knee forward towards the top edge of your mat? So you start to feel that right hip wake up. At this point, both of your hands grab behind your left thigh. So that left foot lifts off the mat. You grab hold of your thigh and relax the back of your head back down to the earth. So if it's lifted, drop it back down, relax your neck. From here, you are the conductor of this orchestra. You pick how deep you take this pose. The closer you pull your left thigh towards your chest, the more sensation you're going to feel in that right hip. So we'll spend the next 3 to 5 breaths here. Make sure that that right foot is still active, so your ankle is flexed. Make sure that that right knee continues to press forward, and then you pick how hard you press down on that accelerator as you pull your left thigh close. Feeling the inflation and deflation of your lungs. All right, y'all, keep your right ankle crossed. Gently drop your left foot back down to your mat. So you're back in that figure 4 shape where we started. Take a big breath in, press both of your shoulder blades into your mat. Exhale, drop your legs just as they are over to the left so that the sole of your right foot makes contact with the ground outside the left edge. Your chest open. Perhaps you open your arms up to a T. And then from this gentle twist, can you actively press your right knee away from your face? So you're still targeting that outer right hip, but we're also introducing a spinal twist here. Take just one more breath. Gently draw your legs back through center. Left foot connects with your mat. Uncross your right ankle. Bring your right foot to the mat. And we'll do that again on our second side. So setting up for that supine half pigeon. Cross your left ankle over your right thigh. Take a second here, pause, flex your left foot, and drive your left knee forward towards the top of your mat. Start to reach your hands around your right thigh, letting your right foot lift, and hug your right knee towards your heart so that you feel a sensation of stretch through that outer left hip. And again, you choose how deeply you take this, using your next 3 to 5 breaths to guide your own body. Feeling that filling and emptying of your lungs, take your last couple breaths here. All right, y'all, leave your left ankle crossed. Just drop your right foot back down to the ground. Take a slow breath in here. Open your chest, root your shoulder blades into the earth. And then exhale as both of your knees fall to the right, or both of your legs fall to the right. So the sole of your left foot. Keep that expansion of the chest. Keep the shoulder blades rooted. And then can you press your left knee away from your heart to create a little bit more sensation in that left hip? Slowly draw your legs back through center. Unwind that left ankle from the right thigh. Pull both knees into your chest. Give yourself a little squeeze. We'll take one last movement, a twist through each side of the spine. Keep your knees hugged into your chest. Take a big breath in. Exhale, drop both knees back over to the left. And then chest opens as your shoulder blades press down. Perhaps here you start to twist your gaze towards your right fingertips if that feels okay in your neck. So we're getting further up the length of our spine, moving towards our neck as we find this last spinal twist. Slowly come back through center. Inhale, draw both knees towards your chest. Last little movement, exhale, drop those knees over to the right. Check in here that your shoulder blades are both grounded and your collarbones are open. So if that left shoulder is trying to peel up, can you actively reconnect it to the earth below you? And breathe. Inhale as you draw your knees back through center. Hook your hands behind your knees, rock and roll the length of your spine, and then make your way up to a comfortable seated position. We'll finish out with some breathing instead of with a shavasana. So in a standard flow class, you'd have a rest period at the end, a little half nap, as I like to call it, where you just calm and center and be still. Today, we're going to focus on breath. So breath is, for so many of us practicing yoga, one of the hardest things to understand or the hardest things to grasp. I remember I could do poses that seemed really challenging long before I could really feel what was going on with my breath. So we're going to do a breath style here called Nadi Sodhana, or it's really just alternate nostril breathing. And it's meant to be a cooling and a calming breath. So the particular hand placement, we're not going to necessarily get into, but what I want you to be able to do, and I'll come up towards the camera so maybe you can see me a little bit better here, is you're utilizing one hand in order to plug your nostrils alternately. So what you do is you breathe in one nostril, out the other. In that same one you just breathed out of, out the original. So we'll do about 10 rounds of this breath in and out. And like I said, it's meant to calm the body and the nervous system. It's a really nice breath to do before a meditation practice or even before bed. So make sure that you're in a comfortable seat. In your seat, you should be able to sit up really tall without feeling strained. Go ahead and take your right hand to your nose. We'll start by breathing in the left side. Inhale through the left. Plug the left nostril, exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Plug the right, exhale through the left. Inhale left. Switch sides, exhale right. Inhale right. Switch sides, exhale left. Inhale left. Switch sides, exhale right. Inhale right. Switch sides, exhale left. Take about 4 more rounds on your own. The next time you exhale out your left nostril, go ahead and release your hand from your face and just take a few breaths breathing in and out through both nostrils. All right, you guys. So I want to take the next 5 minutes or so, because we've got 5 minutes left in our scheduled time, to go through some questions. I have a question here. No name popped up. It says, in child's pose, having the feet flat on the ground was hard, and hard when I started, and still feels like a strange stretch, even though it's gotten better. Any tips? So are you talking about having like the top side of your foot flat to the mat? Because what that does oftentimes is creates a little bit of discomfort in the ankle. And if you've got bony feet, that might also be creating that discomfort. So in that scenario, you can, instead of putting all of your weight back on your heels, which creates that extra pressure in the ankles, I would suggest making use of a block or other prop and bringing your butt to that, so that you're not putting quite so much weight on the ankles. And in this case, I'm actually not putting any of my weight on my ankles. There's a couple inches here between the top of this block and the back of my heel. That may be an option for you. You also have the choice, if it's maybe just the boniness of your foot pressing down into a hard surface, like your mat on the ground, you can take a towel or a blanket underneath the tops of your feet, like a little cushion. You also don't have to take child's pose. You have that choice to come to a seat of any variation that might feel a little bit better for your body. All right. And then this says, all right, can you go over the hot breathing again? Your video stopped. And when do we do this? So that hot breath, it's Ujjayi pranayama. And it's pretty standard to utilize this breath in a vinyasa class because you want to warm up the body. It's meant to create that heat. We typically cultivate it at the very beginning of class from a seated or still position. So we did it today from a child's pose. And the reason we do it from stillness is because, like I said, it's hard to breathe and to move. And if you're trying to cultivate or introduce a breath, it's best done from a place of stillness. So what you're really looking for with that Ujjayi breath is a slight constriction back here at the back of your throat, the back of your airway. So it's going to sound a little bit like Darth Vader breathing, or if you ever held like a seashell up to your ear and you hear that echo, that like blood flowing through your ear, it's that kind of sound. So it's an inhale through the nose with a slight throat constriction. And you notice I'm really working through my throat muscles to pull that breath in. You saw that sinking, and I don't know what this spot's called, but. And then the same trajectory out the nose. So it really does sound like a machine whirring. That's where that Ujjayi breath sound comes from. So we build into it at the beginning, we carry it throughout our practice. So whenever I teach, I always cue people like many times throughout class, check in with your breath. Are you breathing? What is your breath doing here? In order to just bring that conscious awareness back to, oh yeah, I need to. And that heated breath is what oftentimes helps our movement. So we've got, what's this one say? Oh gosh, I'm scrolling too quick. I get a sharp pain in my lower right back at times. Whenever the stretches occur there, I probably need a trip to the chiropractor, but how can I mitigate this? So I have to preface this by saying I am not a doctor. I'm a trained massage therapist and a yoga teacher. So I have a good amount of education in the way of the body, but I am by no means as educated as a doctor, a chiropractor, or a physical therapist. So I can't tell you with any definitive certainty what's going on, but I want to talk to you a little bit about musculature of the low back. So a lot of what we feel in the low back stems right from this space, or maybe even a little lower. So you've got some muscles that run from the bottom of your ribs towards the top rounded edges of your pelvis, called your quadratus lumborum, or your QL, and they do this movement. So when I tighten up my right side QL, my right hip hikes up. These movements are really used a lot in side bending, as well as in stabilizing the low back. If that is where you're feeling the pain, my guess would be that you might have some sort of impingement in that QL space. If it's going closer to the center, there's a chance it could be musculature. There's a chance it could also be something going on with bones or nerves. So I'm always going to recommend to err on the side of caution and go talk to a professional. If a particular movement ever just downright doesn't feel right for you, don't do it. There's no rule that says you have to go to a yoga class and go balls to the walls, ham, all out every time, because that's not necessarily what's going to benefit your body. So if you want to take a step back from a particular movement that tweaks or feels weird to you, take a step back, listen to what's going on for you, because you will never have a better teacher than your own self. When you are in runner's lunge, how do you check or make sure the legs aren't collapsing in? My hips are super tight, and I find that the leg that's back tends to swing wide and turn towards the wall, or stretching side up and back. The front knee tends to buckle in because the hips are tight. Yeah, so what you're talking about here, I'm gonna step back just a little bit. I'm guessing you're talking about this collapsing of the knee in. So you do need to be a little bit more open through the hips, but what you're really focusing on here is what's going on in this thigh bone, this femur. You're trying to rotate it outwards. So trying to rotate it towards the outside of that hip line. So that's what's going to create that movement. A lot of that comes all the way down the leg. So you feel all this musculature wrapping around through the shin, coming all the way up to the arch of your foot. So press into the foot. And if this is still happening, dial it back. I would say that it is better to be less deep in a lunge and feel good than be all the way in or too deep. So dial it back, figure out what needs to happen in order to feel right for you, and then go from there. And if it's happening with the back leg, take a shorter stance. It's harder to control the legs when they're all the way wide like this. Just like it's easier to stand than it is to lunge, right? So bring that back foot in a little bit. You're gonna have to make little adjustments when you shift into things like warrior twos, like you might need to wiggle those feet out a little wider, and that's okay. This is your practice again. What question do we have here? I wanna make sure I'm answering everybody's questions. I apologize, I'm running a little bit over. I just wanna be able to. Okay, I have always had an issue with weight distribution in down dog. My hands always hurt right away. Yes, super common. The reason being is because we weren't meant to walk on our hands. Otherwise, our anatomy would look very, very different. We are meant to walk on our feet, which is why our legs and our hips are as strong as they are, and our arms and our hands tend to be much less strong. The best way to help alleviate discomfort in the wrists and down dog is to strengthen your wrists. And I know that's not what you want to hear, but the stronger your wrists are, the more capable they're going to be to bear your weight. Another way to really start easing yourself into a better strength in your wrists, warm up your wrists. So whenever I teach an actual hour-long flow class, I always take time to warm up the wrist in all directions. Just like we warm up the spine in all directions, I'm gonna put pressure on the back of the hand this way. I'm gonna put pressure this way. We're gonna spin the wrist around, trying to keep the palm fixed and create that mobility through the arm. When in your down dog, it's really common for us to bring our fingers together and then sort of press down only through like this outer edge of our hand. But the weird thing about down dog is where you really want to be putting the weight is right here, which is where we oftentimes have no weight at all. So focus on spreading your fingers as wide as you can. Imagine you were trying to make a baseball glove sized hand, right? And I have a pretty big finger spread. Not everybody's fingers spread this much, but spread those fingers as wide as you can. And then as your hands are down on your mat and you're pressing into your hands, press down through every single fingerprint, as well as every single base knuckle. Your base knuckle is where your palm and your fingers meet. So you're really pressing down there. So what you're essentially looking for is like a suction cup underneath the palm. Also, the alignment of your hands in that down dog matters. You want to be able to, and I'm gonna station my hands here, you want to be able to find the rotation of the arms, like the fleshy bend of your elbow to face forward. That creates openness in the shoulder blades and also helps put the wrists in better alignment. So you may have heard a teacher say, spin your pointer finger to face the front edge of your mat. Look what happens in my wrists when my pointer fingers face straight forward. My wrists are rotated way too far out. I think that it's a better measure, this ditch in between your middle and pointer finger, square that to the top edge of your mat. And from that point, find the alignment in your wrist, distribute through the base knuckle of your pointer finger, the base knuckle of your thumb, and the base knuckle of your pinky in that order. So the most pressure, second most pressure, third most pressure. You notice I didn't say there's any pressure here because there isn't. That will help your wrist. All right, any other questions here? No, I think that's it. You guys, thank you so much. We are gonna be doing a second one of these. We're gonna be doing like a level 2. So we're gonna take what we've done today and expand off of that and start to explore a few more poses and get a little bit more dynamic with it. If you have any extra questions, you can always message me directly. I'm on Instagram, Allison Zalkowski. You can find me on the Black Swan Instagram. And I'm always around to answer questions for you guys. I really love to do stuff like this. So thank you very much for being a part of this. It means so much to me. And on behalf of Black Swan Yoga Houston, just have a beautiful rest of your weekend. Happy Easter if you celebrate Easter. Happy Sunday if you don't, you guys. Namaste. Oh, yes, absolutely. Here. This is my Instagram name, you guys. I guess this chat works both ways, right? How do I spell my name? K-Y. Yep, Z-A-L-K. Yep, that's it. That is me on Instagram, guys. That's usually the easiest way to get a hold of me. I'm not very active on Facebook, and email and I are inconsistent at best. So thank you guys so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Take care. How do I end this? Eek. Oh, end right there.